Hello everyone, welcome to the AI playlist. My name is Mohit Chabda, ex-Salesforce, ex-Walmart, and in today's video we will discuss about types of machine learning. In the last video we discussed about what is AI, ML, DL and DS. In case you missed that, please refer to this video. So now talking about the types of machine learning. Based on how the models learn from the data, machine learning is generally divided into four categories. Number one is supervised learning. Supervised learning means learning from the labeled data. I'll talk about it in detail after a while. The second type is unsupervised learning, which means we need to discover the patterns in unlabeled data. The third type is semi-supervised learning. It's a combination of labeled and unlabeled data. And the fourth one is reinforcement learning, which means learning through the interaction and feedback. Apart from these four, there can be other types of machine learning as well. But when we talk about on the basic side, these are the four important basic types. Now let's check this via diagram. Here you can see we are talking about the types of machine learning, and there are four types: supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised and reinforcement. In supervised learning, we learn from the labeled data. That is, you are given an input and you know type of a output. So basically your model works on that part where you have the input as well and output as well. For example, you're given the set of emails, you need to tell whether it's a spam or not spam. So basically input is present, that is the emails, and the output is also defined whether it's spam or not spam. Whereas in unsupervised learning, you have to find the structure in data. Like, you know the input, but the output is not properly defined. For example, you are given a lot of data and you have to create the customer segments, which can vary. Now talking about the third type, which is semi-supervised learning, it consists of small labeled data and a large unlabeled data, which means you can learn from some of the labeled data, but then you have to apply those things on the unlabeled data. For example, you are given few labeled images, but you also have many unlabeled images. And talking about the fourth category, which is reinforcement learning, it means that you learn by trial and error. So in this, you don't have anything defined initially. You just take your action, and based on the action, you get to know whether you get a reward or penalty. And based on that, you learn whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, whether to repeat it or not. Example can be self-driving. So now let's pick each of these category and check that in detail so that you get more clarity on that part. So first, let's talk about the supervised learning. Supervised learning means that we teach the model with labeled data, which means that each training example has input X that corresponding to the input, you already know the correct output. So you have a mapping. So X is the input and Y should be the output. So basically labeled data here means that for each input X, there is a known output Y. Now let's see some of the examples of supervised learning. So the first example is spam detection. So you are given the input where you have email text. You need to give the output whether it's a spam or not spam. So your output is defined whether it's a spam or not spam. Another example can be house price prediction. So the input would be the size, the location, the rooms, and the output would be you need to guess the price. And the third example is the image classification. You are given the image pixels and you need to identify whether it's a cat or a dog. So the important part is that data set is fully labeled in the supervised learning. As we just discussed about the examples, it can be used for classification like spam, not spam, or cat versus dog, and also for regression like predict the numerical values for the house price. Now why supervised is used? It's like a teacher showing the model correct answers during training. So basically you are training the model that this is the input, this can be the output. So you are basically training it. Now let's talk about the second type, which is unsupervised learning. The meaning is that we only have the input data X, no output labels Y. So the model tries to find structure or patterns in the data. So in the supervised learning, we had labeled data. That is, the input X was known and the output Y was also known. But in this case, for the input, we are not sure about the output labels. So example of unsupervised learning can be customer segmentation. That is, you are given the data and you need to identify the group of similar customers. Another example is market basket analysis. Which products are bought together, you need to identify as an output, but it can vary a lot, so it's not fixed. Now talking about why unsupervised, this is a case where there is no teacher. the model explores and groups data by itself. In the supervised learning, we have labeled data, so it's kind of you're teaching that like this is the input and this would be the output. But here you don't have any particular output, so there is no teacher. The model needs to identify itself and group the data by itself. Now after this, let's talk about the third category, which is semi-supervised learning. It means that we have a small amount of labeled data and a large amount of unlabeled data. So the model uses the labeled data to learn and the unlabeled data to improve. So you learn from the labeled data and apply your learning on the unlabeled data. Why this model of semi-supervised learning is useful? Because the labeling data is expensive. It's kind of you are providing a teaching that this is the input, this would be the output. You are teaching the model, right? And that would be expensive. And apart from that, if you talk about real world scenarios, in that the real world data sets would have a very few labeled examples, and after that the model itself needs to do the grouping of data. Some of the examples of the semi-supervised learning can be speech recognition, where you have few transcribed audio clips but there are many untranscribed audio clips. So you have the combination of labeled data and huge data sets of unlabeled data. Another example could be the image classification. You have few labeled images and then many unlabeled images. So you can see in the visual form, basically for the model you have initial patterns and guidance in the form of labeled data, which would be in small amount. Then you have a large data set of unlabeled data for refining the patterns. So the basic idea of semi-supervised learning is that the model learns the basic patterns from the labeled data and then uses the unlabeled data to refine the understanding. Now let's talk about our fourth and the last learning model, which is the reinforcement learning. It means that the model or the agent learns by interacting with an environment and getting rewards or penalties. So the goal of this model is to learn a policy in which you have to decide which action to take in each of the situation to maximize the total reward. The key points in it is that you don't have any fixed data set. So your model basically explores and learns over the time. You don't have any rules and you don't have any labeled data. So you just make an action and based on the reward or penalty you decide whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, and basically keep in memory whether to repeat it or not. So it focuses on sequential decision making. Some of the examples of this can be game playing, robotic, recommendation systems, decide which ad to show to maximize the click. Here you can see the visual representation of the same. So the basically agent will do the interaction. Agent interacts with the environment. Then basically it will take some action and then it checks for reward or penalty. Whatever feedback you get, whether it was positive or negative, based on that you basically update the policy. Your strategy changes based on the reward or the penalty that you get. Now that we have checked all four type of learnings, let's see the summary table so that you can revise it and you can get the complete idea of the video in few minutes. So these are the four types: supervised learning, unsupervised, semi-supervised and reinforcement. Talking about the labeled data in each, supervised contains the labeled data. Unsupervised does not contain any labeled data. Semi-supervised contains few labeled data and a lots of unlabeled data. Whereas in reinforcement, this is not applicable. It simply learns from the reward. So there is nothing like a labeled data for reinforcement. The goal of supervised learning is to learn from the known outputs, because in supervised you are given a known input and you also have a known output mapping. So basically it's kind of a teaching model from where you can learn. Some of the examples for the same can be the spam detection and the price prediction. Now talking about the unsupervised model, the goal is to find the patterns and structure. Some examples can be the clustering of data, like there is data and you need to do the grouping of the customers. So for semi-supervised, the goal is to improve the learning. You can take the teaching from some of the inputs which are given as the labeled one, and then you have to apply that on the unlabeled data and refine your strategy. Some of the examples can be the speech and the images, where you have few of the labeled data and lot of unlabeled data. And the last type, reinforcement, the goal is to learn the best actions because we want to maximize the rewards. So what happens is, like, you take the action in real time and based on the penalty or the reward, you modify the strategy of the model, because the end goal is to maximize the reward. Some of the examples can be games and robotics. Okay, in the visual representation you can see we have taken all four of these learning models: supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised, and reinforcement. So the supervised learns from the known outputs. Unsupervised finds the patterns in the unlabeled data. The semi-supervised improves the learning with a few labels and then refine the strategy by applying that on the unlabeled data. And in case of reinforcement, you basically learn the best actions from the reward. So let's take an example which can combine all four of these. Let's talk about the self-driving car. In that, the supervised version would be you recognize the pedestrians from the labeled images. Talking about the unsupervised, the cluster traffic patterns. This is kind of a variable stuff, right? The traffic can vary. So that comes in the unsupervised. In the semi-supervised, you would have a few labeled videos, but there would be a lots of unlabeled dash cam videos. So you pick the learning from the labeled ones and try to refine that by applying that on the unlabeled ones. And then talking about the reinforcement, you basically learn driving policy by trial and error in the simulation mode. So you can see in the self-driving car, we are using all four types of machine learning. So giving you a brief summary, the supervised learning learns from the labeled data. The example could be the spam detection. The unsupervised finds the hidden patterns like the customer segments because there is no labeled data in it. The semi-supervised uses the few labeled samples plus many unlabeled samples because it has the combination of both small amount of labeled data and a huge amount of unlabeled data. So pick the learning from the labeled one and then apply it on the unlabeled one and refine your strategy. Talking about the last one, reinforcement learning, it learns by trial and error. So basically in this case there is no labeled data. So in any environment you take the action, then you check whether you get a reward or a penalty, and based on that you modify your strategy. The example can be gaming and the robotics. Okay, so this was about the types of machine learning. We discussed about the four types in the machine learning in this case, which was supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised, and reinforcement. I hope you got good understanding of all of these basics. In case you have any doubts, put that in the comment section. I'll try to help you out. If you found this video helpful, press the like button and share it with your friends so all of us can become pro in AI. Alright then, this is Mohit Chabda signing off. Subscribe to the channel and thanks for watching.